Welcome to the Retail Tech Podcast. My name is Darius Wasafi, and today I am speaking with Bob Howland, a leader at the MACH Alliance. So I won't go into too much description myself. I'll let Bob do it himself. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Darius. Great to be here.
MACH Alliance is one of the key industry organizations that is really forward looking. And I'd love to know how you came to this place and this role, and then get into the actual organization.
Yeah, sounds like fun. And I think you describe it well. I think of it really as a movement or a mindset. And so my journey with Mach started before the Mach Alliance was founded. So in 2019, I joined a company called Dawn Foods. They're a bakery ingredient manufacturer and distributor. I was their first ever chief digital officer. They hired me in part because Dawn Foods became the 27th, yes, 27th company I've either launched or run e-commerce for, both as an end user in the company or brand, and as a someone on the portfolio or technology platform side of the business. So I have a unique perspective on how to do this, and for a B2B bakery ingredient company that traditionally sold to your corner bakery or your corner donut shop, they really wanted to change their business model. It was not that they wanted to launch their first ever e-commerce business or their first website or the first one in the industry. No one had done it yet. It's that they really wanted to change their business model. And that was very attractive to me as a e-commerce digital veteran, if you will. And as I looked around at the company and how they operated and what was in place and what wasn't in place, it really stood out to me that I couldn't make one big decision. I couldn't make one big decision and go with one traditional software vendor in the space. And I'm going to try really hard not to name names, but we all know there are, maybe they're called legacy providers or maybe monolith providers. But I knew that I needed to make a series of decisions. I would be launching the first ever e-commerce business with this organization in a series of steps. And I really needed flexibility. I really needed to be in control, and I really needed to do this in the lowest cost possible way. And although there was no name for it at the time, I went out and got a back-end provider. I went out and got a content management system. I went out and got a product information management tool. I went out and did all these things to build my own composable tech stack. And lo and behold, I launched, by the way, on time, on strategy, and yes, way below budget. I launched one of the first ever MACH Alliance or MACH tech stacks in the United States. And I ran into people who were part of this journey. And lo and behold, the MACH Alliance was founded the following month. The term composable was coined by Gartner the following month. And the good folks of the MACH Alliance asked me if I would be on their advisory board, since I was, one of the first ever people that had put this together and had a lot of insights to offer and how that journey went. So that's my journey with the MACH Alliance. I've been part of the organization as an advisory board member since 2020. And in October of 2024, so just a few months ago, I became the first ever chairperson who joined the organization as a chair outside of being a member company, which is really a sign that the organization is increasing its focus on the enterprise buyer or what we call the end user.
Great. What is the makeup of the alliance? How can companies join? What are the requirements for them to join?
Yeah, so in the old days, we'll date ourselves here, but in the old days of 2020, MACH stands for microservices, API first, cloud native SaaS, and headless. And so at the time, there were four founding members who created the alliance, and they went about a certification process that was rigorous, highly scrutinized, very objective, very transparent. It's out on our website, the machalliance.org website. Anybody can look at it. And it really, at the end of the day, being a member organization, the marketplace counts on the MACH Alliance to have a rigorous certification process. And so big picture, we're looking for SaaS organizations that are focused on, composable ways of working, building scalable technology, being replaceable to the end user if things don't go well or the end user makes a different decision. It's a plug and play world, and we're really looking for people that adopt the microservices, the API first, the cloud native, but also scalable, replaceable, repeatable, um, and pluggable. And again, if you're an ISV or an SI or any kind of different technology company out there, you can find the certification process out there on the website.
So everybody that is a member must meet all of these four requirements in their product, correct?
Well, there's more than four, but yes, every member of which there are over 100 has gone through that process to join, and then there's a process on a 2-year cycle to recertify. Because maybe you were certified 4 years ago, maybe there was an acquisition, maybe you changed your strategy. So we want to make sure that the certificate means something today, not it meant something when it was time stamped back when it was first created.
Okay, you said there are more than four. What are the other requirements?
Well, I went through microservices, API first, cloud native, headless, pluggable, scalable,
Oh,
future-proof,
okay.
right?
Okay.
Replaceable, like all of these different things.
Okay.
And it is a mindset, right? And so, yes, we spend time, we have a dedicated group that spends time looking at under the hood, that looks at someone's technology setup. But we also think about the product roadmap. We also think about, references from other people who are in the MACH Alliance. We think about their client base. So we're looking at a lot of things, because at the end of the day, if I'm an end user and I choose something knowing that it's MACH certified, it really needs to embody the spirit of the MACH Alliance and MACH composability, as well as the technical specs, right? Technology
Okay.
for the sake of technology is
Right.
that's not what we're after. We're really after helping end users and brands and organizations, make technology decisions with confidence. And in those technology decisions that they make, where they are MACH certified, know that they have, not future proof, but a future oriented technology, not a technology that's past oriented.
Okay. So, I mean, just being API first, microservices based, and even headless are a foundation. As you said, not maybe future proof, but future ready. Microservices has been around for a long time.
Right.
Headless, I mean, these have been around. Where did the composable part come in?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you want things that are API friendly, so that anybody can bring a new technology. There could be something that you and don't even know exists that could come to the market in 9 months. And if
Mhm.
it's API oriented, it can plug into a composable stack in a way that allows an organization to then move forward with that. In the way we used to operate with monolithic or legacy systems, you didn't have that ability, right? And so composability is a really important piece of how more and more organizations are thinking about their tech stack outside of digital, right? Outside of e-commerce. But this is how, a CFO is thinking about his or her AR, her accounts receivable, their accounts payable systems, right?
Mhm.
All of these things have the ability to be future ready and future oriented if we only think more about taking these big systems and these big, kind of promises of how to operate and breaking them down into what are we really trying to do with this one piece of technology or this one business process? How can we make the best version of that? And how can we make it so that it can connect with horizontally and vertically into my organization? And that mindset is really, I think, really being enabled today with MACH Alliance and with the MACH certified companies in a way that's really, really exciting, not just for your e-commerce people, but for anybody making a big technology or a big investment decision in an organization. It really is a game-changing way of thinking. And I think it's being embraced way outside of the technology stack, because the benefits are, frankly, they're to the business. They're not to the technologist. They're really to the business. right? At the end of the day, I can
Yeah.
create really unique customer experiences. If I've set my systems up correctly, I can create really unique customer experiences in my business. I can have clarity to my future technology spend in a way I've never had before. I can control my pace, how quickly I want to move, how fast I want to invest, or how slow. And I can also get to market really quickly. I mentioned earlier when you asked me about my background, when I joined Dawn Foods, again, there was no website, e-commerce, nothing in the company, nothing in the industry. And the company, like many legacy businesses, didn't have the business processes in place to enable e-commerce. And so my job wasn't to, whip up a website that could, be shoppable. My job was to create a pricing structure for the business, to create the first ever product catalog for the company, right? Those things had to be in place to enable where I was going. But at the end of the day, I made a promise to the organization that I would launch not only the website, but I would fix all these business processes. And you didn't ask me, this isn't a quiz show, but a rhetorical question. How long from the minute you decide to do that, do you think you're able to roll that out, to finish all those business processes, to sign contracts with vendors, to write a technology map, to build a team, to write code, to go through UAT and to launch? Like, how long do you think that would take an organization that has been around for over 100 years? I'm going to give you the answer,
Years.
and you're not going
Years.
to believe me because it took
Yeah.
us 9 months.
Wow. That's amazing.
And again, we
Yeah.
delivered on time, on strategy, on budget. And the composable nature of how we did that is just critical to the way that the business thinks about itself going forward, right?
Yeah.
The organization is no longer a company that's making these single, once a generation big bets. The organization now makes 50 really important decisions every year. And because they're taking the big rocks and breaking them down into small ones, you de-risk the business decisions you make. You de-risk the technology purchases you make. You de-risk, changing a business process while the bus is running down the highway at 55 miles an hour, right? And so that mindset makes it very exciting for an organization, the whole organization, to be an organization that has a portion of its tech stack to be, running on a MACH architecture, and really thinking about composability as a mindset for how the company operates.
Yeah, that speaks to your own mindset of being ready to jump in when you join the company and being, I mean, you can't just like start to figure out things and move that fast. You've already had this in your mind. You've been thinking about this problem and you knew where to go to find the right pieces to compose them into this in 9 months. I mean, that takes all of that 27 launches and thinking about what's working, what's not working to get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, in many
Yeah.
cases, I had 26 chances to not get it completely right. And joining a company that's like, hey, blank canvas, like you lead us, you tell us how to do this, you lead the way. We'll create guardrails, and at some point we'll create a budget. At some point, I know you have to hire people, and you can't just hire the world, all those things. But certainly the 26 prior situations gave me a very unique lens into, I have to be honest, mostly what I didn't want, right?
Yeah.
Mostly what I didn't want. And I've been in way too many organizations where we took a long time to make a decision. The decision ended up being made by a committee. And then, the team that got the joy of launching something, really had handcuffs on them the entire way. And where the organization ended up was something that really no one wanted to take responsibility for, and no one at the end of the day was truly happy with. And that's at the end of the day what I really want to avoid.
How
I
do
want to.
you, so sorry, how do you, because I mean, you and I probably have been in these situations and we probably agree the problem in the organizations is not the technology, it's the people, the mindset. How do you change the mindset of the people? Like, you probably deal with this on a daily basis now, especially. So how do you change the mindset when people are just resistant and the politics and the me first attitude and all these things, right? How do you manage that to move that fast?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are three things I keep coming back to. One is one really needs to understand where the organization is. And an organization that has self-awareness, that can really look in the mirror and understand who they are and who they are not, is a great organization. You could be last in your industry or first in your industry, but if you don't have self-awareness, what do you have? And so I think self-awareness of an org is important, and that's at the board level, that's at the C-suite level, that's that's
So
that's
yeah, let's
everyone.
dig into that a little bit. Like, give me some signs of self-awareness or the opposite of it.
Well, I'll come back to when I interviewed at Dawn Foods, I asked every person what this role was, this new chief digital officer, what did they need and want out of the role? And I got incredibly consistent answers, right? From people of all walks of life, all parts of the world, right? And that showed me that they really, maybe I got slightly different versions of different of answers, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I got a very clean and consistent response to the question of, what do you see this role, being, doing, delivering, and how do we universally decide what success looks like, right? It's a layup kind of a question, but it's a very important discussion that then emerges from that. And so again, I think getting clarity and consistency across a group of people would be one way I look at. Another way to look at it is what do they measure? Like when you look at what a company reports in their annual meeting or their employee meetings, or if it's a public company, what they report to the street, what we are, what we measure, right? And so at the end of the day, if a company is looking at things like their customer satisfaction scores and their team member satisfaction scores, right? I think that's a very important thing to be looking at. If you're in the technology world, you want to look at tech debt. Do they talk about tech debt? Do they even know what tech debt is, right? And and you want to make sure you have some synergy across functions to make sure that technology is a discussion that's at the table, or that they know it's not at the table and they're trying to change that. So I often look at where the senior technology person is in the org chart, who do they report to, how is that relationship, and is it if it's a CIO, are they managed as a cost center? If it's a more evolved technology leader like a chief digital officer or something like that, where do they sit at the table, how are they measured, and what conversations are they driving?
So that actually brings up another question that I would like to expand on a little bit. The role Chief Digital Officer. That's not a CTO. It's not a head of product. What exactly is it? What's the responsibility of a CDO?
Well, I wish I could give you an answer, but I've now met maybe 100 chief digital officers since I got that title, and we all have very different jobs, right?
Okay.
And so for me at Dawn Foods, I played a role in the company's strategy. I was on a very small team that drove the company's strategy and drove the strategic planning process. I played a role, as I articulated a little earlier, in terms of the business processes. When I joined the company, the business processes, a lot of them were manual, a lot of them were centralized. Not surprising for an organization that had been around for 100 plus years, but more importantly, no one really owned them all. And so I played a very important role with another executive to put together 9 work streams to really go after the core business processes of any organization, to build automation, centralization, documented process around them. Um, in many companies, it obviously owns the digital experience, whether that's a website, mobile app, or any other kind of part of communicating with customers. In many organizations and at Dawn Foods, it also owned the IT team. So the CIO worked for me. And so it allowed me to have a footprint over the entire technology aspect and mindset of the organization. And we really spent, I was there for 5 years. We spent a lot of time trying to get the organization future ready, right?
Mhm.
Dismissing old ways of working, manual processes, things that weren't documented, and putting together automation that really helped team members and was customer facing in some way. And so at the end of the day, it was really about how do we move the company forward and help the business strategy be better enabled by technology and automation. So I don't think any company is really tech-led at the end user level, but you really want the business strategy to be something that works better because of the technology footprint of the organization, not having, the technology footprint of the organization hold it back and be a dis-enabler.
Yeah, I mean, it's like having access to electricity and not using it. It's at that level. Digital transformation is at that core level of business now. So it's probably a better, maybe a more expansive term for that role is a chief digital transformation officer, or because it's all about like, and it goes beyond e-commerce and retail only. It's like as you mentioned, it goes beyond that. So, okay,
I, I
yeah,
I think of it
yeah.
as really business transformation, and at the core. And early in my career, I worked at companies like GE, J&J, and American Express that I really learned, how the business operates and what are the business processes that really enable those companies to be the amazing brands that they are, and to live at the top of the podium in terms of most valuable and most well-regarded organizations for decade after decade. So I was really steeped in not technology or marketing, but really managing a P&L and really helping an organization be the best version of itself. And when I kind of come back to the MACH Alliance and think about that, it all, for me, it all falls together. I think of organizations making big technology or big business investments, and many organizations, frankly, are just not very equipped to do it. And I know this may sound harsh, but at the end of the day, I don't think organizations really take the time to make decisions in the best possible way. And technology is something that really has been at the heart of that. And I think, the MACH Alliance and this whole movement to having, pieces of the part, if you will. So you have your content management system. It's not embedded in some larger entity. I think of the old, and, maybe I can pick on IBM here for a minute, but, IBM was great in offering an e-commerce solution at the time because we didn't really understand what it was. And IBM, brought together all the pieces for everybody. It wasn't very good at any one of the pieces, but the selling point was that it did it all and you didn't have to think about it, right? As we all got more savvy as customers, as consumers, as business people, and as e-commerce people, surely there was an opportunity to have all the components of an e-commerce business, you know, be a mixture of all the different parts. And
Mhm.
I think the composable conversations we're having in that mindset is just a natural evolution. I can't tell you where we'll be in 5 years or 10 years, but certainly, when I go out to eat with friends, it's great to go to a restaurant that can have, burger and sushi and pancakes. But I'm not thinking that that restaurant's going to have great sushi and pancakes and burgers. If I really want a great burger, I should go to a burger joint, right? If I really want sushi, I should go to the East Coast or the West Coast, or and have fish that was, came off the boat that day, right? And I think as a
Mhm.
society, we understand that if you want something good, you really ought to focus on, a provider that is just doing that, that wakes up every day. How can I bring the best sushi to the market? And
Yeah,
I think, that's in many cases, the members who are in the MACH Alliance, they live and breathe that niche product that they're bringing to the market, and they want to be the best at that. And that's a different way of working than we saw 10, 20 years ago. And I think it's exciting. It opens up all kinds of options for, end users and enterprise buyers.
So now I'm going to be thinking about sushi APIs and burger APIs. You started something new here.
Yeah, it's
So
almost dinner time on the East Coast, so I'm getting hungry.
the how do you measure success at the MACH Alliance?
It's a good question. So we do an annual survey, and we release the results in January every year, and you can find the survey and the results on the website. We survey hundreds and hundreds of end users and ask them about their journey, the decisions they've made, how they're doing, and one of the things we find year over year is that there are more and more people adopting mock technologies and architecture. There are more and more people, thinking about composability, not just the folks that we are talking to that tend to be the technology folks in organizations, but the respondents talk about how composability is becoming a mindset within their entire organization. And so we look at the year over year increase of those numbers, and it's phenomenal, right? So I don't think mock is a future idea at this point. We're seeing this embedded in how most businesses are working today. More than 50% of the companies we're surveying have some aspect of their tech stack that they would consider mock. Close to
Okay.
90%, think that there's a composability mindset in their organization, right? And so that, surveys is one way we can look at success. Another way we look at it is our member base growing, right? So we started at 4 founding members back in 2020. We grew to 19, 20 or so in 2 years. At the end of last year, we were over 100. It's not, we're not trying to get members just, bigger isn't better in my world or in my mind. It's really maintaining the quality as we continue to expand the reach. And right now, we're really focused on commerce and content um, technology companies. I can see a day in the next few years where we're going to start getting into finance and healthcare and other verticals, because all those verticals have technologies that are riding the same kind of evolutionary wave that we've seen in content and commerce. And so again, I think not just growing that member number in the space we're in today, but continuing to bring in new people, continuing to make sure that people we have are still considered mock compliant, and reaching out into new industries and new verticals, just to expand the reach here and to continue that thought leadership that I think has been so well received by the marketplace.
What's the certification process like? What does it involve?
Well, we talked about it a little bit before. So it's microservices, API, headless, and cloud-based. It's also the way you operate. So, are you scaling? What's your product roadmap look like? Are you truly a plug and play environment? What do people in your space say about you? Um, and beyond that. So there's a mindset, there are technical specs, and then there's kind of the business side of the organization that we all look at.
Is it okay? So maybe I should have said it differently. What is the actual process? Like somebody applies for membership, and then you have team members inside the organization that you assign to every application, and then they go through. And is that like, does your team actually get in and see what they're being told is accurate? Like, do they verify the information, or it's almost like, like organic food. They send a survey and say, "Are you organic?" And everybody, they come back with a one-page thing as, "Yes, we're organic," and then they got the label. So my question is like, how objective is the actual certification process?
Yeah, so it's highly scrutinized, highly transparent, highly objective, right? I mean, the worst thing that could happen to an organization like the MACH Alliance would be that, we discovered that someone wasn't MACH compliant, right? I mean, what points of certification process if people aren't truly being certified correctly and or aren't operating in the fashion that we're espousing that all these companies operate in. So it's a very rigorous process. Um, trust, verify again. We get under the hood and we look at the tech.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. So that's I I knew that, but I just wanted to make sure that we let everybody else know that this is not just a, fill out the survey certification. This is a, in-depth vetting process.
Yeah,
So,
and at the end of the day,
yeah.
it's a discussion too. So we're asking questions, we're looking at the tech, but we're also getting a sense of who put together the tech and where they're going with the tech. And we have to be, careful. And there's been a lot of discussion, and industry feedback on the process. And our focus is always, we have a process. It's fairly well documented. Not everybody might be happy with it, but at the end of the day, we have to hold ourselves to a standard, and the standard is the one that the members who have come in have held themselves up to. And so there is this aspect of it has to be consistently applied and consistent from year to year and application to application as well.
Okay. Are so the members are both technology companies as well as retailers?
So the members are ISVs, SIs, they're technology companies.
They're just technology companies, not retailers.
No.
How would a retailer say that they are mock compliant? That
They
would be an interesting gauge as well. Like retailers to actually say this on even on their like public ones on their earning calls, like be a goal to work towards.
well, I think they're less about mock compliant or there's a difference between mock certified, like your tech stack has been certified by the MACH Alliance to be these things that we just talked about. There's another part of the equation here, which would be, hey, I'm a retailer, I'm a brand, I'm a wholesaler, whatever. I operate in a way that's, a composable mindset, or my tech stack has been built with mock principles, right? At Dawn Foods, I said that I had a mock architecture. I didn't say I was mock certified,
Right.
although all the aspects of my mock architecture were mock certified. But the language matters. So only members of the MACH Alliance would be certified, but there are a lot of other ways to talk about MACH from the end user or the enterprise point of view that would be relevant and using that phrase, as long as they use it correctly.
Yeah. So instead of mock certified, you would say mock compliant, I think, as you mentioned also. So I mean, again, because I think organizations need a definable and measurable goal to work towards. So it's not just some fuzzy idea and sounds good, and then we don't measure it every year. Like year to year, how much closer are you to becoming mock compliant, company X? And that's like something that the board can actually hold the team responsible for and ask for this metric. Explain every year what's the progress. So that's what I think would be good because like we talk about people, that the fact that the people and the mindset is a big part of the the lack of progress potentially. I mean, there is like even from a technology vendor, there's a lot more than 100 companies. So why aren't the rest of them becoming mock certified? I mean, I'm sure there are some financial aspects, but I think the bigger problems, and I'll ask you this, is why is it because they're not passing? They're like the applications outpace the amount of certification process that can do. So maybe this is something you can talk to, like how many applications do you get? And of these applications, how many of them do actually pass?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact number of applications we get, but there are, I mean, currently a dozen or so that are being reviewed. And the review process, as you can imagine, takes time, and it's not a clear straight line. It depends on the availability of the organization that's applied to some extent. And it also depends on what we're finding and how many follow-up questions and all of that we have. But I think the application success rate is, don't quote me on this, but let's say it's around 50%. For
Okay.
argument's sake, let's say it's 50%. That doesn't mean that those 50% who fail are never going to get in. You
Hmm.
know, if you get in, you get in. If you don't get in, you get a roadmap for what you need to do to get in, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of the
Okay.
people that, went through the application process maybe 6 months ago and failed are likely to going to come back, and a good chunk of those are going to get in the next time, right? And so it's a pretty iterative process. You're rarely going to apply for something like this if you don't think you're close, right? And the membership criteria is out on the website. So it's pretty evident what we're looking for and what the principles are. And so organizations, you would think that the success rate is going to be pretty high, that maybe not the first pass, but after two application processes, you're likely going to get in because you're self-selecting, right? Someone who is microservices first, API first, cloud, all those things, of course they want to be part of this group. And if you're not oriented that way, you don't have your technology and your product set up that way, you're not going to try, right? So it's a little bit of a self-selection process, it, in my mind. And I'm oversimplifying it to be very fair.
Just the fact that somebody applies, I think it's a signal that their intention is in the right place.
Mhm.
So, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as far as like people know what they need and they can work towards it, that's really what matters. And I mean, even the people that apply and they're certified, as you said, every 2 years, they have to recertify again just so that they stay on top of the game.
Yeah. And
So,
I mean, it's
yeah.
it's important for us to, let me just do a footnote here or an asterisk here, right? This is one way of operating. It doesn't mean that it's the only way of operating, right? And it doesn't mean that this is for everybody, right? And so we want to be careful here to say, the people who have become members, the people who are active in this community, the people that come to our conference in April. We do an annual conference this year will be in April in Chicago. The people who are doing this are, they're leading their organizations and they're operating in a way that, we see all these very, very tangible values that I had mentioned earlier, right? Speed to market, control, de-risking big tech decisions, team morale is a big one I see all the time, total cost of ownership, all these amazing benefits that retailers and other organizations see. But at the end of the day, it has to be fit for purpose for you. And maybe you don't have your technology in a place that can really get the benefit of this. Maybe your organization is not thinking this way. They're very successful in how they operate today, and what we're talking about in this podcast doesn't resonate. That's okay, right? We got to be careful that this isn't for everybody. Now I would
There's
make
no
the case.
judgment. There's no
Yeah,
judgment here. It's just success
yeah.
is what matters.
I'd make the case
Yeah.
that it would be you'd be doing a disservice to yourself and your organization as a leader if you didn't, add this to the consideration set if you were doing an RFP or replatform or really thinking about your tech stack or your digital journey differently going forward. This ought to be something that you're considering. At the end of the day, is it right for you? That's a different conversation. But I think more and more this is at the table and people are talking about, which is really exciting.
I totally agree. And I guess I'm not I have a little bit more freedom to state stronger opinions than but I mean I again we're at the point where we need to make decisions about things and sometimes quick decisions. If we want to change and future ready the organization in 9 months, we need to make quick decisions. We cannot just sit and wait for people. So I personally think that, I mean, I have spoken to people that wanted consulting or advice on a piece of technology. And the first question I ask them is that send me the link to their developer page. And if they don't have one, or if I have to apply or talk to somebody to sign up for it, and then they need to give, that's a really big red flag in 2025. It's
Right.
been a red flag for years, but
For
like
you.
even now, like again, I'm sorry, it may like sound too strong or too harsh or not empathetic enough to the organization, but the organization needs to move or it won't be there for much
Right.
longer.
Right.
It's that serious.
Yeah,
So
you're preaching to the choir here.
yeah. So anyway, I mean, I know you have to walk a fine line and not try to like offend anybody, but I mean, I just like so I think like if you don't have an API for if you're a technology company and you don't have an API, or at least you don't have a plan to have a robust API, that's not a good sign. It's just not a good sign. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
so yeah. Now, so is this becoming actually in the RFQs a question or a check mark for companies looking for new technology? Are you seeing like, buyers, the buying committees actually adding the mock certification or compliance to their requests?
I'm seeing maybe not that language, but I'm seeing things like, composability. I'm seeing things like, you know, contract years being variable. The days of buying a 5-year or 10-year contract are gone, right? I'm seeing things like they're asking questions around pluggability, around, what's out of the box versus what's in your sales deck. They're the nuance and the creativity in the RFQs and RFPs has gotten a lot better. And certainly there are enough people who are helping, from a consulting arm, there are enough people helping brands with this that are very, very familiar with the MACH Alliance and the journey that we're on. And again, you have to assess the organization. If an organization is an Oracle shop or a Salesforce shop, I promise not to name names, but here I go. Those organizations also have e-commerce solutions. And if you're the procurement director or the CFO, you're scratching your head like, mock what? Compose a what? Like, why don't we just go with Salesforce and we can have everything under one roof? And that may be the right decision for that org. But again, I'll come back to, our job is to not just work with the digital teams and organizations and brands, it's to get into the procurement space, to get into the mind and the conversation with the CFO. If the CFO of all the brands that your podcast reach knew what I know, they would certainly ask that we look at people other than Salesforce and Oracle as part of the decision. Include them, but yes, like let's get educated on this thing over there. And by the way, let's not buy tech based on the sales deck, right?
Mhm.
Let's never buy tech or any major investment based on somebody's sales deck. And all too often, that's what brands and retailers are still doing. And it's somewhat criminal, right? I think you and I would agree. But everyone has a lot to do in their day, and how much time and effort are they going to put to this, and how much accountability is there going to be to that? And until things like accountability change, not just to the decision, but to realizing the promises made by the decision, right? It's one thing to
Yeah.
make a decision on tech, it's another to implement the tech, and then it's a third thing to run it long term, right? And how often are we looking at that entire life cycle, and how often are we creating, case studies around what good looks like, and showcasing maybe where people didn't have something that's good. And again, I come back to the MACH Alliance. At the end of the day, it's, we got a set of standards. Members have to have this set of criteria to be in the alliance. Because we have 100 plus members, they're working together to create best practices. It's so exciting to hear and see the conversations that are happening. Because we're thinking about the end user, the retailer, the brand, et cetera, we're building this whole education library where you're CFO or your marketing person or someone in your digital team can come take a course and get certified in a topic that's really relevant to their job, right? And so we're now reaching deeply into the education space to really make sure that when we say things and take actions and do RFPs, that there's some guardrails and guidance for people. These are lonely jobs in organizations, and the more that the MACH Alliance can do to bring certified solutions, to have best practice conversations, and to create education for people, it's becoming a beautiful world out there with what the MACH Alliance is doing, and I'm just super excited to be part of it.
It seems like the fact that a company is on a composable format, it actually tells me about their confidence in their product more than the confidence in locking people into contracts.
Mhm.
So that's like that tells me that this company, this vendor that I'm starting to maybe build a relationship with, is so confident that they're going to continue innovating best whatever the future brings, that they will make it easy for me to swap them out if I need to, if they don't keep up. I mean, that's a level of, I think, maturity and confidence that is really good to see in a vendor.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm sure people aren't going to be happy with me saying this, but when I launched, you know, digital at Dawn Foods in 2020, all my contracts were 1 year. And the business looked at me and said, "You're just creating a lot of work for yourself because you have to recontract and or go through the RFP process again." And 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 the conversation that we had around that was really, really impactful for all parties, right? The CFO walked away with exactly what you just said. These companies that we had just contracted with had so much confidence that they were going to over deliver on the promises they made, that we would make the contract renewal process a piece of cake. We had so much confidence in their solution and knew that they were going to do, we had seen their roadmaps. So we knew that our content management system was going to have some incredible number, like 250 releases in the next 12 months. So if I stood still, my website would have gotten better dozens of times because of those 250 releases, right? Not all of them are customer facing and then customer facing, right? A lot of them are back office stuff. But the mere fact that you're working with a search vendor that is making their search process better every month in a way that's very tangible to you and your business, like again, you could sit still and not move from a brand point of view, but just knowing that all the pieces and parts are getting materially better every year, and that those people are living and breathing and waking up every morning trying to figure out how, to beat their competition and to make you a satisfied customer. That's the beauty of where we're going. And I think the MACH Alliance just creates this whole ecosystem around it, for not just for the technology providers and the SaaS brands and product companies, but also for, retailers and brands and businesses alike. It really is this amazing ecosystem that the genie's out of the bottle. We're having the right conversations. People are helping each other, paying it forward with what they've learned, and it's a great place to be.
It sounds like a very, very dynamic and interesting network as well internally. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So, well, let's end by maybe touching on what are your goals and what are the expectations that you see about how things are going to move forward in the next, let's just stick to 1 year, because right in this today's world, we can't even go that far out without being disrupted. So,
I think 2025 will be about three things for the MACH Alliance and for everybody that, is around this organization. So one, I mentioned earlier, public service announcement. We've got our conference. It's called the Composable Conference. It's in April. It's in Chicago. There'll likely be 500-600 people there. All folks are welcome. And we're really reaching out to members and the end user community, retailers, brands, et cetera, to bring a friend, right? We all go to these conferences and see people and learn so much. Bring your marketing person, bring your finance partner, bring someone and bring them into the conversation. So this end user education is a really big piece of what we're trying to evolve further into in 2025. And the conference will be an exciting place with things kicked off and a lot of news and exciting topics, et cetera. So that's one. Two is the word's a little clunky. The word's been around for a long time, but this concept of interoperability is something that we're really trying to get our hands around. How can we bring forward even more standards around this plug and play scalable dynamic of what we've been preaching for 5 years. How can we have and create interoperability between member companies, right? So today a brand might come to 2 or 3 different MACH certified partners and have to like work with all 3 of them or work with an SI to bring it together. What if these companies were already working with each other so that the solutions were could be bought as a bundle, if you will.
Hmm.
So I'm oversimplifying it, but this concept of interoperability that's been around since the internet was born and since Cisco systems and whatnot back in the day, open code, open source, all of these things are really going to help create that world. And then the third thing, and I alluded to this before, but it's a nice way to kind of recap and summarize. I think today we're very focused on commerce and content, and we're hyper focused, and a lot of our legacy end users are in the retail space. And I think we want to continue that journey and continue doubling down on that. But we also see in the next few years that this concept of a composable mindset really, really would work for businesses and other technology purchases like a finance system. They could also work in other verticals beyond retail, like healthcare. And so we're being mindful to keep the quality we have where we are, but to continue to see where does it make sense? Where are these concepts, terms, and where might the certification process have transferability into other areas of the business world globally?
Fantastic. Well, with that, I think we have covered a lot. I really appreciate meeting you, Bob.
Well, it's great meeting you, Darius, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring the MACH Alliance and the composable conversation to your fan group and your listeners.